What is up, Facebook world? This is Kimberly and Connor Tracy over here at Big Red SEO, tuning in on this beautiful Friday. Hi, how are you?
Good.
I was having a party before we actually went live because the title of this awesome episode is 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it was 1, 2, 3, 4.
It's not.
Connor said we're going to go live 1, 2, 3. Wait, hold on. And I was like, wait, the screen says 1 domain, 2 domain, 3 domain, 4. I don't know. So I was over here doing my own jingle. Unfortunately, it was not recorded, so you guys totally missed out on that. But today we actually wanted to tune in. As you guys know, we've been running this gig for over 9 years, right? And we work with businesses all around. Our zone of genius is SEO as well as WordPress website design. And whenever we actually get into either the SEO services or the website, like whether it's they're creating a brand new website for a business that they're launching, maybe they never had a website for their business, but they've been established for a long time, and or they're actually reamping their website design or they're redoing their entire branding. And domains is part of the center of the conversation in the entire process, if that makes sense. This guy, with him being in the web hosting world previous to Big Red SEO, and then he dipped his legs in both sides for a while. Then I was able to pull him over to the Big Red SEO side full time. You've had experience with domains for a long, long time.
Yeah. I started with domains back in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, early 90s, back when it was $80 a domain per year. And that, as a teenager, that was an expense.
Yeah.
That was the choice between, well, do I buy Coke and go to a movie?
Yeah.
Coke as in drink Coke, not Coke as in,
Yeah, the other Coke, right?
Which reminds me, I don't even have my drink.
You didn't go get your beer. He was going to actually have a beer. Do you want me to go get your beer?
Sure.
Do you want a beer? Okay. Yeah. People have him. Continue talking domains and your history.
It's in the freezer.
Make the music.
I'll make that also.
Yeah.
But okay. So with domain stuff, basically back in the 90s, there was only one place you could get domains, and that was Network Solutions, which has now been branded as NetSol because that sounds cooler. But basically, they were the grandfather of everything, and they still exist. They still do domain stuff. They still charge $20-$30 a year when everybody else out there is charging. Sure, bring it right in front of the camera, and everyone else out there is charging anywhere between $8 and $12 for a domain. Now, we talked with a client last night, and they were looking for a specific domain, and they went to GoDaddy, and GoDaddy had it for 99 cents. So they were able to buy there. Usually, when you find those deals, there's an asterisk beside it, and then you've also got to buy 2 years of hosting at $100, whatever it is.
But I remember one time we were working with a client, and they got their domain for like a penny, I think it was. Since it was like, oh, it's just a penny, let's do like 15 of them. But unfortunately, they didn't read the small print. So what it was is that 1 year domain was a penny for sure, but the next following years was $25.99, and they had to purchase 5 years in advance, right? It was quite interesting. So if you do purchase domains, whether it's through GoDaddy or anywhere else, we just say GoDaddy because GoDaddy, it's not that it's not a bad company, right? It's like one of the largest domain registration companies, and they do a lot more stuff than just domains now, right? The only thing is that they sell, they try to upsell and cross-sell, and they do a lot of different stuff. So even with the conversation last night, we're walking this new client through, hey, go purchase this domain. And then she's getting all these upsells of all these programs, and she doesn't know how to get out of the screen, right? Just know that. Just be very aware of that. And sometimes whenever they give discounts and promotions, there's something attached to it, right? Like there's some kind of like thing of, okay, do you have to prepay 5 years in advance, 10 years in advance? Not that that's a bad thing.
Right.
But yeah.
And even from that end, with web hosting, you get the same thing where if you buy for a longer period of time, you usually get a discount. I use SiteGround quite a bit with my stuff. And if you buy for, I guess the first invoice is 50% off.
Yeah.
So whether you buy for 1 month or 3 years, you get 50% off.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it, I'm going to buy in for a year or whatever it might be, and I'll get my discounted rate. When that renewal comes up, you have to remember that it's going to be more expensive, and it is what it is.
Right.
You agreed to it. It was a promotion, and you now can't complain that, hey, the price is doubled. No, it's not. You just got 50% off before. It's not doubled.
Right.
And from that end of things, if one of the reasons that I like locking in for a year or two on hosting, depending on the pricing, of course, but if things went downhill, if the support wasn't there, if the speed wasn't there anymore, or anything like that, I'm only losing $50 out of the whole year, so I can pull and go somewhere else. Whereas if I'm locked in at $35, $40 a month,
right,
and I'm locked in for a year, that's $400 I might lose out on. So that requires extra thought. But that being said, from a marketing perspective, if your website's running slow, whether it's $400 or $40, you've got to leave and you've got to get something else, or you have to upgrade. So there's a couple different routes in there, but domain names is what we're talking about today, not web hosting, not all that end of things. So what have you got about domain names, Kim?
So the thing about domain names is whether you already have a website or you're actually creating a brand new website, really take time to reflect on what do you want that domain name to be, right? So you can utilize domain names for multiple different reasons. One, you can do brand reputation. So you can get a domain name of your actual company name. There's nothing wrong with that. And that actually works for a lot of companies, especially those that maybe they're just not dipping their toe into the SEO process, or maybe they're just not looking at Google AdWords, if that makes sense. Another area is you can actually use domain names based on what product and service that you're actually offering to help and assist those end users to find you even quicker. While Google says exact domains do not work, we've actually tested and find that they do work in specific areas. If you opt to go an exact match domain, so prime example for that, if you sell red roses in huge bouquets and you buy the domain red roses in huge bouquets and you make that your primary domain for your website, and then you put all marketing efforts to that, you've got to make sure that you actually follow the best practices with Google and the other search engines, and you don't do anything naughty or half-assed or try to hack or try to speed up a process, right? If you do, you're going to be on high alert with the search engines, and they might actually penalize you, and then your entire company goes away, right? For gosh knows how long. We've seen it Google will pull the plug for a little bit, and then we've seen that they pull the plug completely, if that makes sense.
And we've seen it with different industries. Carpetcleanininomaha.com. It's a great name, and it says everything it is you're doing. But if Google thinks that you are, if you bought the domain name for the purchase of influencing rankings within the search engines, you could potentially lose out and not necessarily get penalized, but just won't get shown as much. So the whole thing about the EMDs or the exact match domains, Google says that they don't hold a whole lot of value. We still see that it does, but at any point in time, Google can rip that away, and then you got to think about things that way.
Yeah, and here's what I would say on the exact match domains really quickly before we shift gears is that you really have to think about the strategy on it. Right? So the thought process is if you just buy it and you just let it sit there and you don't do anything with it, it's not going to do much good for you, right? There's other stuff that has to happen within your SEO process of your website for that domain to actually start to climb the rankings. Does that make sense? So the thing is again, you have brand reputation. You can do a domain name for your company name or any other type of brand reputation. So say you're a specific expert in that domain for that service and expert is available, you can utilize that, right? Mm-hmm. You can utilize for products or services that you actually offer, and or you can actually purchase and create different domains for different extensions of marketing that you're doing, right? So say that you're doing, say that you offer courses. Some are in person, some are online. You might actually purchase the domain with whatever the name of that course is and then have online afterwards. And then in your tracking in Google Analytics, you can see, where am I putting my efforts? Where's the traffic coming in? So say that you do networking events, right? And you get referrals, or you do digital marketing, or you do some kind of you pay to get your logo or your company on a different website. Mm-hmm. You can actually create a domain that's just for that advertisement. So whenever you look at your Google Analytics, you can say, how much traffic do I really have coming through this investment that I'm making at this other marketing area? Right. That works really well for TV or radio, right? You can give them the general domain, and that's kind of the practice that a lot of businesses do. They just advertise their own company URL domain, and then they're like, well, how do we know that it's working? Because they're not asking people when they pick up the phone, how did you hear about us? Well, then at that point, you're in a black hole and you don't know what's working, right? So you can actually use your domains to start to track, to figure out who's coming where. all the marketing that I'm actually spending or investing, or the time I'm investing, is it really working or is it not? So this is also really good for if you receive a lot of referrals, referral clients, or referral business. You can do a specific domain and you can create a landing page for those specific people that are landing on that. Then you can start tracking that as well. And if you have a high referral rate, you might consider creating a whole different website design or a whole different membership area for referrals.
And yeah, as you say, the way the marketing end of things works, that's really where the power comes in. If we went out and we bought the domain WordPress web design in Omaha.com, and then we would point that to an inside page on our website, do the marketing based around that domain, and then be able to track the results as to what's actually happening. Now, one important thing about doing something like that, WordPress is the name of another company. It's a registered trademark.
Yep.
It's a registered service mark or just trademark. I can't remember which. It's a trademark for sure. It's copyrighted and all that kind of stuff. So you can't just take somebody else's product and use that in a domain name and think you're going to get away with it. You will get caught. It's one of the reasons that web designers, we don't use the word WordPress in the domains. You use WP, and people know WP means that.
Right.
Photoshop, you use PS for Photoshop tips. You use PS tips. So things like that you can do to get around it, and there's ways to link one word to the other and things like that. But be aware, there is copyright stuff out there. Buying a domain name with somebody else's brand in there. Yeah. It's just not worth it in the long run.
And here's the deal. Just to clarify, we can use WordPress in our actual website copy, right? Mm-hmm. We just can't purchase a domain that has that, because then at that point, we're breaching their service contract, right? Or trademark contract. So whenever you're actually looking to get into domains, there's some really good opportunities. But again, pull out a piece of paper and a pen, or really think out, what am I doing and how am I doing it? Something that we saw that's kind of a dirty habit that even we do internally is we have this genius idea. We're like, oh, let's do this thing. And then we go see, is the domain available? Yes, it is. And then it sits there for a year or 3 years or 5 years or 11 years. Who knows?
I've got domains that are 15 years old that I've never done anything with.
Right. So the thought process is, if you do wind up purchasing for a domain for this existing business or maybe something in the future, figure out whatever you need to do to just kind of make sure that the ball's continuously going down the road, right? Why own a domain if you're not going to do anything with it? At the same breath, there are people out there that actually purchase domains and then they do a nasty thing called squatting on the domains, right? That's where they can actually go to a black market and sell it, or you might wind up receiving spam to say this domain is available at this rate, and then they skyrocket the price or do whatever that they want to do.
So there's good domain investing. Yes. And then there's squatting. So the squatting usually happens, like in our case, we're Big Red SEO. If somebody went out and bought the name Big Red SEO Omaha.com, then approached us to sell it to us for $1,000, that's squatting, and they're not allowed to do that. Again, our copyright, our name is in there, common use name is in there, all that kind of stuff. So they wouldn't be able to do that. We used to see that years ago with celebrities. Somebody would go out and buy CameronDiaz.com and then try to sell it to Cameron Diaz. You're not allowed to do that, and the courts have upheld on that. Now, they can own the domain name and not do anything with it, and then Cameron Diaz can approach them and say, hey, I want to buy your domain name. At what point they then turn around and say, well, yeah, it'll be $1,000, and then it's up to her to make that decision. Right. But they can't approach her, and that's how the cyber squatting stuff domain squatting all plays out. Yeah. So buying domains as an investment, there's a lot of companies out there that do it. It used to go out, business.com, stamps.com. Those were all domain investors. Somebody purchased that, sat on it for several years, and then was able to turn around and sell it for $1 million or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. It's a rare case, but it does happen. Mm-hmm. And even, we work with different clients. We had a training company, and they really wanted a domain name, but it was going to cost them $800 to buy it. Yeah. And they had to decide, well, is it worth the $800 investment? In their case, it was. Yeah. They went ahead and they brokered a deal. So that ties us into brokering. Yeah. So there are companies out there that'll broker a deal. You can go to the different websites, find out, buy this domain name for X amount, or submit a bid price that you want to pay or whatnot. for the most part, most of them are reputable companies. There are some that are out of country, and they're perfectly fine too. Dan.org is one. They just have a wealth of domains. GoDaddy has a whole back ordering system, and they have domains that have been purchased that you can then make some money off of. If people land on it, you get a couple cents and things like that. So you can make money while you're waiting to sell the domain.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, make sure you're using somebody that can purchase the domain. The domain does get transferred in your name. You don't want to lease it from whatever company. You want to make sure everything gets transferred into your name. Now, at the end of the day, and we had a discussion on a hosting forum the other day about the domains and do you own a domain or not? So we own bigredseo.com to the extent that we currently lease it from ICANN, who actually control all domains in the world.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we own it as in we're the registered owner of it, but they actually own the domain.
Right.
We're leasing it. If we forget to pay our $12 next year, we don't own that domain anymore. It goes back in the public pool.
Which that's never a fun process, guys, ever. So if you do have a domain and you have a renewal, put it on the calendar and pay it 30 to 60 days prior. Mm-hmm. And if you actually do get an email from whoever you purchased your domain, don't just ignore it and don't just stick it in spam, right? I can't tell you how many times we get calls from friends, family, clients, or just random prospects of, crap, I forgot to renew my domain and it's gone. Sometimes we're able to get it back for them because there's a grace period, but in a lot of cases you can't. And if you actually have a domain and have had it for, even if it's like 3 months and you're building something or longer than that, if you do not renew your domain and it expires, you lose everything that you've done, right? It's no longer yours.
Yep.
So really quickly to shift gears just to another level, say that you're going to purchase domains and you're like, hey, I want to look at a domain. Okay, awesome. I've done my strategy. This is the information. It's really important to make sure that you utilize a website that can actually tell you what is the opportunity for you to get traffic for a specific domain, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think about this abstractly, remove the www dot at the beginning and the .com at the end, but you would actually want to determine, okay, the sequence of words that I'm using, could I actually get just some traffic barnacle-wise? So what that means is you would actually be doing the domain because of the intent of the product or service that you offer. Okay, awesome. However, that keyword actually might have volume and traffic already, or the keyword phrase have volume and traffic already just cause, if that makes sense. We actually last night were working with the client and we were like, hey, like just out of curiosity, what would this domain have traffic-wise? And it was an asinine amount of traffic just organically, and the difficulty ranking was less than 2, if that makes sense, out of 100. So what that means is it wouldn't take a whole lot for them to get ranked in position number 1. And when they get ranked in position number 1, they can get all of that volume traffic, if that makes sense, for their specific product and service.
And the domain said exactly what it is they do.
Exactly. So there was like no
thing, and it had the word custom, whatever the product is.
Yeah.
And it spoke exactly to what it is they're doing. They're trying to rank that term on their existing website.
Yep.
But you can cut that process in half by buying that domain name.
And
that's what they did.
Yeah, maybe even more than half. I mean, who knows when it comes to the equation? So there's a website that I want you guys to write down. Connor has talked about this website all the time. So
I actually have a training video on YouTube for this video.
There you go. So if you guys have not followed us on YouTube, be sure to go out there and do that. Connor does tutorials out there and carves time out of his day just to kind of give you guys some resources. But the website that you guys need to check out is Ubersuggest. So it's UBER and then the word suggest.com. It's actually created by Neil Patel, which is an SEO mentor within the world. And he created this where you can actually go and put a keyword or keyword phrase in and figure out what is the volume traffic. Currently, right now, this website and this function and tool is free. I don't know if that'll be that way in the future, right? But right now, I can tell you it's free. And since it's a free tool, Connor actually went and created a tutorial a while back where he walks you through how to use it. Personally, it's very intuitive and it's very easy to use, but sometimes you can kind of get lost in the things. Here's the deal is if you have an idea of an actual domain that you want, a keyword phrase, and it gets zero traffic, that doesn't mean don't purchase it. You might just want to look at and realize that, okay, you can purchase this and you can try to rank it and you can try to get the SEO, but you're not going to get any traffic. Sometimes it makes sense to go ahead and do a URL, even if there's no traffic, based on brand reputation or again, what's the strategy that you're trying to do? Right. What's the intent?
So before we started Big Red SEO, Big Red SEO had zero traffic, which we would expect. But it's got the word SEO in there, which is what we were doing and are doing.
Yeah.
So that was why we continued forward with that direction. There's other reasons, and there's past videos about why we chose the domain, but or the name for the company, for that matter.
Right.
But at the end of the day, as you say, check what the words are. See if there is any traffic coming in. What happens if you use the singular version instead of the plural?
Yep.
You know, custom versus customized.
Right.
What's the kind of difference with search volume at that point?
Yeah.
So do checks on that and see how that looks. Depending on the price of the domain name, if somebody else owns it, it might be worth buying it.
Yeah. Sometimes you can drop in some really good investments, right? We had one client, this is a great fun story, just massive success. We created a website design for her, and she had one domain name, right? And she's very specific on what service she offers, but she actually opted to just go for her name for the domain, right? And in conversations, we built the website for her. We were having a chit chat. She's like, I always have been keeping an eye on the .com for my name. However, it's never been available. We did a little bit of research by going to a website to figure out what the expiration was. And we're like, hey, just for shits and giggles, how about you just send an email to the person that actually owns it? So when you register a domain, you can actually choose to have privacy where it doesn't show any of your information. There is usually a fee attached to that for whoever does the domain, right? Or you can actually choose not to hide your privacy. And the person that owned the domain of her actual name.com, they didn't hide it. So I was like, hey, just for shits and giggles, send them an email and see, hey, is there any shot that this domain's for sale? It just so happened that the domain that he purchased was for his ex-girlfriend that they broke up many, many years ago, and it was just sitting in his account. He had already pre-purchased it for gosh knows how many years, and it was actually a surprise gift for something that she was wanting to do, but she turned around and she decided she didn't want to do it, and then they split up and yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So what happened was he actually offered the domain for free for our client, if that makes sense. Now, I think that she bonused him and gave him like some kind of some kind of investment for his time, right? But now it's hers. Now it's her domain and she can utilize it. So what I would say is sometimes, really quickly to say, it's important that if a domain is not available, right? Even if you research to find out who it is, load the website. And this website, there was nothing on there, right? So if it's actually a different business that has a full website and the copyright's updated, there might be little to no chance that they're actually going to say, hey, we'll sell it to you or we'll give it to you. But if it's a website that doesn't have any material or they don't even have a website or information there, you kind of got a chance of actually getting it and or having it sold.
Yep. Let me see. I had one other thing that I wanted to talk on here with regards to the individual domain name. So rather than just a domain name pointing to an inside page of your site, actually taking a domain and making what's called a microsite. Usually microsites are 3 or 5 pages, generally not much more than that. Is there an advantage for doing that from the SEO perspective? You know, if you're going out and you buy multiple domain names, what's the advantage? And you can look at Google and the Alphabet and Microsoft and all those guys. They all have hundreds of domains that point back to different areas of their websites. Some of them are their own individual websites.
Right.
So we were talking in a discussion, and essentially, if you buy a domain name and you set up a micro website, keep in mind that's a completely separate entity at that point.
Right.
The marketing efforts that you've been doing with your existing company, you've now got to do an entirely separate campaign with this other one. So if you're spending a couple grand a year on your main domain, you now need to spend whatever amount over here. You might have doubled up your marketing fees. So be aware of that. Those microsites, they do work. They serve their own particular niche. if you're a florist, just because you talked about flowers earlier, and you also raise bulldogs,
right?
You probably don't want both of those on the same website. Build two separate websites.
Right.
Perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But you're marketing them different, and you're going to spend marketing in two places.
Absolutely. And the thing about microsites, some people think that if they just buy the domain and then they actually just put a landing page up, that a microsite will actually grow SEO-wise. It's a bunch of bullshit, guys. You have to put some kind of intent and effort. You have to let the end users and the search engines know, what is it that you do? Who are you offering? Why should somebody choose you? What can they expect? Why are you the industry leader? Why? Just focus on the why. A microsite should actually be an entire full website. Now, I'm not saying go and do, 7 pages or 14 pages. You can actually have a pretty in-depth knowledge landing page for that matter, that is good for the end user and the search engines. But you can't just buy a exact match domain and then put it in a microsite and point it back to your regular site and expect to grow in the SEO rankings. That's not how it works at all. So,
and you could you could set up a 5-page domain, but just make sure you're updating it.
Yeah.
And as long as you're updating it, then it's new content and it's new stuff for Google.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else that you wanted to cover regarding domains, guys? It's a lot of material.
For this video?
Yeah.
No, I think let's wrap it here.
Yeah.
And we'll do some more in-depth stuff. If you have questions, of course, leave us comments and stuff like that, and we'll do a more in-depth explanation about different segments over on YouTube.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys so much for tuning in or watching the replay. We appreciate you and hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Don't forget, comment, subscribe, and all that kind of stuff down here, and we'll kind of go from there.
Perfect.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Have a great day now. Thank you.